Hello everyone, my name is Amanda Albright and my presentation is going to be on the correlation between education and poverty. An overview of my presentation, I will be talking about 4 aspects of child poverty in the United States. These are going to be views and problems with child poverty, poverty and cognitive development, ethnic background correlation with poverty, and ways to fight poverty. Statistics. Here are some numbers to reflect on throughout this presentation. These are some child poverty rates in the United States. From 2007 to 2011, the poverty rate rose from 17.8% to 22%. And now we can look at even further back at 1969, which was 14%, to 2011, which is 22%. A statistic that blows my mind is the 2010 statistic listed at the bottom of the slide. 1.6 million homeless children in the United States is a crazy statistic because the amount of disadvantages that poverty-stricken students have is extremely effective to the educational system. As a future teacher, I find that I think that I'll be teaching in a perfect environment sometimes. But these numbers can point to the opposite of my prediction. The likelihood that I will have some of these students in my classroom really makes me decide that I need to acknowledge this problem. The next is going to be views and problems. As stated by R.W. Connell in her article, Poverty in Education, she quotes, "How schools address poverty is an important test of an educational system." This quote is important because it shows the urgency for current and future educators to understand the effects of poverty and education and how to overcome these results. The fact that children coming from poverty-stricken communities do not perform as well is a scary fact. There are exceptions, but the students must have an intrinsic approach to learning. By intrinsic, I mean they have to be internally motivated. There is another term, extrinsic, which is the counter term to intrinsic. Extrinsic means that those students are only motivated by outside sources. They have to get a grade in order to pass. Intrinsically motivated students want to pass for themselves and to succeed in the world. Poverty and development. Many factors play into the cognitive development of children as they go through life. Poverty can affect some of these basic things that many of us take for granted. The quality and amount of educational tools such as books, newspapers, and magazines in the home can really impact the cognitive development of children. Without these tools, the students have limited amount of stimulus to learn from, and they can't learn to read and write through things like pictures and exercises as easily. Traveling and seeing new things can be very important to the cognitive development of students. Museum trips are very fun and exciting for students, especially at a young age. These trips can show them how to learn by doing things hands-on and actually learning from that experience. One example from here locally in Albuquerque is Explora. They have a lot of hands-on equipment and stuff, but it is expensive to get into, so you run into that problem. Public access to educational aids. Yes, there are ways for children to access tools such as books and magazines in public places such as libraries, but first they must find a way to get to those places. Parents who are raising children in a poverty-stricken environment may need to work 2 jobs and are in very little time to spend with their children. This causes problems with interaction between the child and the parent. It is important to see that without the money for these tools or outings, the parents cannot provide the stimulus for good cognitive development. This chart is just to let you know and to give you a visual of how mediating mechanisms affect intellectual development. I went over how poverty can affect cognitive stimulus in the home, but there is still other factors that come into play, such as physical environment at the home, a mother's involvement, health, and childcare quality. What to get out of this is the fact that there are external factors that affect the child's cognitive development, and those external factors relate back to poverty and to this child's intellectual development. Ethnic backgrounds. Ethnic backgrounds have been proven to correlate with students and the poverty levels in the United States. The top 3 ethnic groups for child poverty are African American, Native American, and some Latino groups. These groups, according to the U.S. Census, are at least 2 to 3% higher risk for persistent child poverty than non-Latino white children. This basically means that these 3 groups, their children are more likely to have longer periods of poverty in their lives. They will pass it on and share it with their future generations of children also. Now, when looking at the root cause of this distinction, one of the conclusions that you reach is the case of discrimination against minorities. For example, the fact that African Americans had a difficult time in the past finding good paying jobs, that in turn has them living in lower income facilities and neighborhoods. This was not setting them up for success by any means because their children were going to lower level schools and learning less things, therefore cognitively developing at a slower rate than those of white people. This may be a factor in why poverty has carried over in certain areas and through certain minorities of people. Civilization fighting poverty. How you can help to fight poverty. Here are some ways that you as an individual can help fight poverty and also get an understanding of what is going on in the world. I know that most of us are future or current educators, but these things may be helpful to you in understanding and giving back to your students if you should encounter this issue of poverty, which is highly likely. I have 4 different things that you can possibly do. 1 is educate yourself and your family. The key is to understanding and being able to combat this issue. More education, better jobs, and lifelong success. Donate. When I say donate, it can mean giving a cash donation to a program or donating some food or clothing to a clothing drive. There are many ways that you can give back, both large and small. Volunteering. This is one that is probably most difficult for people because of time. If you do have extra time and are interested, you can volunteer at any program combating poverty in your community. Fundraising. If you have a person who is really good at fundraising, or you may be good at being organized and creating these kind of events, you can always donate time. A Christmas coat drive can mean the world to a family in need. In conclusion, I would like to say that poverty is an issue and that we need to acknowledge it in the world of education more than anywhere. Teachers need to be aware of the effects poverty can have on their classroom and their students at both an early and mature cognitive level, which means it can range from kindergarten all the way up to a junior in college. There are ways to help with this as both an educator and a parent. Just reach out, and there are ways that you can help your students or your child. Finally, I would like to leave you with these statistics. Thank you for watching my presentation, and these are my references.